Welcome food fans, picky eaters, the flavor curious, and everyone in between. Nothing makes good food better than good conversation. And your table is ready. Come right this way to the Food For Thoughtcast with your host, Melissa Reagan. But you can call her Chef. All right, let's get this episode started.
As a chef and a person who loves all kinds of food, I'm always looking for ways that I can emphasize quality over quantity without feeling like I'm missing out or depriving myself of the things that I love. And I love pasta. Carbonara, mac and cheese, primavera, cacio e pepe, you name it and I'm all about it. That's why I choose Bonza. Bonza is the pasta made from chickpeas, which means it has more protein, more fiber, and I believe more flavor than regular old pasta. Seriously, if you go in my pantry right now, there are 2 boxes in there awaiting their next culinary adventure. Bonza has over 12 different kinds of pasta, including penne, rotini, elbows, and cavatappi, which is my favorite, because all of those curves and ridges hold even more delicious sauce. Bonza also makes pizza crust, which tastes too good to believe that it comes from peas. You can find Bonza at Whole Foods, Target, and Walmart. Hey there, food fans, picky eaters, flavor curious, and everyone in between. I just want to start this episode off by saying I would be absolutely remiss if I did not mention the winner of the June promotion. This is Ryan W. from Garland, Texas. He donated the highest amount to the local food charity of his choice, so I matched that donation for the North Texas Food Bank. The total ended up being $70. This week, he is going to receive a Food For Thoughtcast magnet, a Food For Thoughtcast coffee cup, some stickers, of course, some Bonza pasta, and a signed copy of Chef Steven's cookbook, Get Your Grub On. Ryan, thank you so much for participating, for looking out for food inequality and striving to help end hunger and food insecurity in Garland, Texas. And thank you so much for leading and winning this food promotion. Today, I'm talking to Erin Baumgartner. She is the CEO and co-founder of Family Dinner in Eastern New England. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Food For Thoughtcast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan. But as always, you can call me Chef, coming to you on this beautiful, beautiful day. Actually, it's about 1,000 degrees here in Dallas, Texas. But today we are talking to Erin. How are you today?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
Fantastic. Erin, how's the weather where you are?
It's beautiful. And it's also wonderful, like cooking, eating, gardening, farming weather. So we're pretty lucky at this time of year, specifically food-wise in Massachusetts.
I'm so jealous. Erin is the CEO and co-founder of Family Dinner. But first, before we get into all of this, I want to ask you, just like I ask every guest, what was the most amazing thing you ate this week?
That's a great question. And I have 2 answers to it. The first is that it's mushroom foraging season here. Amazing. So my neighbor came over with just a big, beautiful bag of chanterelle mushrooms. We're going to roast up with fresh pasta and cream and lots of pepper. So that's absolutely delicious. And the second is my weekly kind of low brow, but my favorite thing to eat, which is a cheese, vegetable, and potato chip sandwich. Okay. I can cook a lot of fancy food. I can buy a lot of fancy food, but a potato chip and cheese sandwich really just gets to my heart, and I refuse to apologize for it.
Okay. So I have to know walk me through this sandwich because I'm intrigued.
First of all, thank you for asking. So you can do it on any level that you want, but I like a crusty bread, lots of mustard, sliced cheese on the bottom, any veggies you have. And it's essential that the potato chips go next to the bread. Okay. Because it allows for maximum crunch. And so I get very specific and engineer a very specific sandwich. And it's not something to eat in front of other people. It's not particularly pretty, but I love it.
This deserves more attention. So I have to know, like, what kind of mustard?
Sure. I am a mustard fanatic. And so there is in my refrigerator one shelf of mustards. And so I like a spicy Dijon, something that's a little bit of like a punch right in the face. Potato chips, I think, are going to be your next question. I'm a Cape Cod potato chip kind of girl, but that's, it's in our DNA. Also love a Lay's Ruffle. Try not to get into any flavors. I very clearly have opinions about this. And so the potato chip cheese sandwich, I think, should be part of everybody's life, and feel free to go and explore on that.
This sounds incredible. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was put Fritos on. So it would be more Southern, right? But I would put Fritos on like a cold deli sandwich. And
oh yeah,
I love that so much. Absolutely. I had some previous guests on the pod, Team Fat Kids. Shout out to them. They do chips on their sandwiches for the food truck. They call that redneck lettuce.
Yeah. I like to call it croutons sometimes when they go on top of a salad.
Oh man, that sounds so amazing. And I love like a good hot Dijon, like on a burger with blue cheese. If you put the right kind of spicy Dijon on there, then it hurts your nose while you're eating it.
Yep.
It's good.
It should be a little bit painful. That's when you know you've got the exact proportions correct.
It's so good. So the chips go right next to the bread. Is there only mustard on one side?
Other side gets mayo.
Ah, I see. I see.
Mustard. And now you can get fancy. You can grill it if you want. You can melt the cheese, or you can just like eat it like a squirrel with both hands.
Like, you got me looking at my pantry, wondering if I have chips in there and like how I'm going to make this happen today. I might have to go to the store because, yeah.
I highly recommend it.
I love that so much. Well, so on the Food for Thoughtcast, and thank you so much for coming on. There is nothing lowbrow. There is no food. There's no food judgment here, because if it makes you happy, it makes us happy. So, I love that so much. And then, man, as far as the foraged mushroom pasta situation is concerned, like, I mean, unless you're lactose intolerant, and if you are, I'm really sorry, but I don't think there's anything that's ever been made worse by adding dairy to it.
Yeah, no, more cheese, more butter, especially when it comes to pasta. And then the foraged mushrooms almost have like a meaty taste to them. They're stunning. So it was this wonderful gift that came in, and you're like, how do I get this exactly right? Like, how do I really nail this?
Yeah. And I mean, the chanterelles have that meaty umami quality to them. And so when you put something like Parmesan, it has that salty, it can cut into that richness. Like, that just sounds so good.
It's so good.
It sounds so good. Well, I've had coffee so far today to eat. I'm going to call that a meal because it's beans. So, here we are.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you're making me so hungry. I have listeners tell us, like, I have to not listen to this, while I'm hungry, because it's really terrible. And I have also told them, like, recording it while hungry is just as bad.
It's just as bad.
All right. Well, I just want to get into this. I want you to let the listeners know, like, first of all, just a little bit about yourself, right? Like, tell us where you're from.
So I am from a small town north of Boston. I don't have a background in food. It's not what I decided. That's not what I wanted to do with my entire life. I sort of fell into this in this sort of serendipitous, what turns out to be lovely way. And I'm really enjoying the work in food, but it isn't my background. So it's been fun having started the business 6 years ago, just to keep constantly learning, because all of this stuff in many ways is fresh to me.
Yeah.
And so running family dinner is what we do full time, but it's really just out of a love of local food and wanting to support the people who grow it.
Right. I find, in this industry, it's really funny. You either have, it's like one of two relationships with it. You're either in it for life, or you found it by accident. But there's no like apathy. There's no tacit relationship with this business. And so even though it wasn't your first choice of, fields to go into, I have to know, like, do you have any fond food memories of growing up, or like, how did that look for you?
Wow. Yeah. My mom, we love to eat. Dinner at our house was every evening, dinner table at 6, like whether you wanted to be there or not,
right?
Or like whether they wanted you there or not, like
right.
That was the rule. And we cooked almost all of our own stuff, stuff out of the garden. We made our own, mom made the bread. It was just very high level, not high level, just really beautifully made food. And that was sort of her style, and still is. She's an excellent cook. And when I was in high school, and I worked in the local pizza shop for 4 years, so I became an aficionado about pizza, and I have real strong opinions there. And then in college, I worked on a local family farm, an organic family farm.
Amazing.
During the day, which was incredible, out in this beautiful space, organic food raised the way it's supposed to be, animals raised ethically, like just this beautiful experience. And then at night, I was a waitress at Applebee's.
Oh yeah, wow!
Just wild whiplash of like the pinnacle of what food should be, and like the depths
from one spectrum of one part of the spectrum to the other.
To the other end, it was wild. But it was just like, well, I have no money and I need to go to college. Like it was just like anything that you could do to keep that hustle going. But looking back on it now and seeing both sides of the food coin was really informative.
Right. So family dinner, always an event, certainly tradition and maybe sometimes an obligation, right? Growing up, you had to be there. It was made really important. So did you cook growing up, or did you learn, is that something that you still enjoy? You doing that?
I love to cook. I have a house full of cookbooks and I wish I used them, but I don't really have and I definitely don't bake because I don't have an attention to detail and attention span that allows me to bake at all. I mean, like, I think the last time I tried to make biscuits, they tasted like communion crackers, like the stuff you get at Catholic church. They were absolutely terrible.
Oh no. I don't know if biscuits or Jesus should be offended, but
they were so bad. They were so bad. And I would always cook alongside my mom. So I learned a lot of the things that she really does beautifully. But there are some things that are my favorite dishes from her that I won't even try.
Sure.
Like I won't, because it's not going to be good. It's not going to be the same. And so I beg her to make them for me occasionally. And she kindly agrees. But I do love to cook, and I love to mess around with like, what is this? What are the 3 things that we have in the refrigerator, and how do we turn this into something?
Yes. Like the home version of the Chopped.
Yeah, the home version of Chopped. Yeah,
that's my favorite. Some people, it will instill anxiety in them, or they'll go like, I don't know where to start. But and especially in this day and age, and I want to touch on supply chains later on in this talk. But I think it's especially important to have that skill today, or at least to be able to figure out how to use what you've got, because I think that's where we're at, like economically and food wise, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that people get down on themselves. Like so many people say, I can't cook. Mm-hmm. That's not true. I mean, you can. You can cook. Maybe they're not the most beautiful, Instagrammable things that are coming out of your kitchen, but yes, you can cook.
Yeah.
And it's a muscle like any other, right? You can make yourself something to eat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be beautiful, and it doesn't have to be fancy. But I think people put the brakes on themselves or the reins on themselves, thinking like, oh, if I don't do it at this level, it means I can't do it at all. Well, that's simply not true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to break down all those walls and help people be confident. Like if you're feeding yourself, nourishing yourself, if you're taking care of your family, then that's what really counts. And like people ask me all the time, they're like, oh, what do chefs eat when you go home from work? I'm like, yeah, cereal, frozen pizza, ramen. But there's little things I can do to make it really nice. Yeah. I can upgrade those items a little bit, but I made a scrambled egg kind of, I don't know, you call it a skillet for lack of a better word the other day. It was frozen vegetables. I was cleaning out 3 or 4, quarter empty bags. I wanted to eat a lot of food, but I wanted it also to be like not my calories for the entire day. So I loaded up on as much vegetables as I could find. I had a couple of turkey sausage patties left over, and I scrambled a couple of eggs into it with some like chili crunch and, some gochujang. And, but for all intents and purposes on the plate, it looked like a pile of garbage. Not to be confused with a garbage plate, which is an actual thing, which also is not Instagram worthy. So that to say, right, like it would have tasted really amazing had I shared it with somebody, and they would have been like, "This is great. How'd you make it?" But was it social media worthy? No.
It's like somebody already ate this. Like, this is not great, but it doesn't matter.
This I sometimes ask my cooks, did you plate this with your feet? Because that's what it looks like.
I tend to ask people that on their handwriting. Like, did you write this note with your toes? Because your handwriting is atrocious.
Were you in a car writing this? because it's illegible.
It's bad.
So always that love of food there, but tell me about your background, because I want to see how that changeover takes place, right?
Man, my background makes no sense. So my academic background is in French literature. I went to grad school in France to study French literature. I lived and worked in France for a bit. I then taught high school French and Spanish for 5 years. And then I pivoted and started a career at MIT, where I worked for 11 years. In MIT in Cambridge. I don't know why there's only one. I don't know why I said that.
It's very important.
Yeah, there's only one. I worked at MIT for 11 years. And then during that time, I sort of started having the idea about the technology and the software behind what we wanted to do with this business. And so started the business while I was still at MIT, and then left and now just do this full time. So it's lots of like little left turns that make absolutely no sense. But that's kind of been my background and that's my career.
I love that though. But I think, twisty turny, but every single experience, equally important, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I think that there's something to be said for saying yes to life. Like when weird little opportunities come up and I find myself in them occasionally, I can like hem and haw and be like, I shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. Is this safe? Is this the right thing? And sometimes if you just say yes and you work hard, like something nice can come out of it.
I love that so much. And so when you talk about the business, like tell us about Family Dinner.
Sure. So Family Dinner is a local farmers market delivery service. So every week we work with a huge network of farms, and we source meat and fish and cheese and stuff like fresh pasta and pastry and cheeses and deliver it directly to our customers' doors.
Amazing.
But that's kind of the front-facing story. The back-end story is that we're trying to use data and predictive analytics to eliminate waste in the food supply chain. How do we make the food supply chain tighter, shorter, more efficient, and eliminate waste at all ends of that spectrum? So those are sort of two parallel narratives of us and what we do.
Man, I feel like that's so important, but I think that you're taking a lot of the work off of other people's hands, right? With that all the data and all the information that goes into the back end. There are those other companies, you see them like advertised on social media, and they say, we're going to sell you this ugly fruit because somebody else rejected it, right? Is there any similarity there, or is it a completely different animal?
I think that, first of all, I think those companies are incredibly important. I think if we are using more and more of the food that is grown in this country and not throwing it away, I'm for it. Our products are not the sort of ugly, misfit second tier produce. We try to find things that are beautiful and, again, hyper local. And we want it to be, this bag that is delivered to your home every week that looks like this bounty that you yourself went to the farmer's market and got a pound of fish, and then you got fennel and you got fresh pasta and all these different things. So we want it to be this big, beautiful experience while trying to minimize waste in that process.
Man, I really love that. I kind of feel that the enemy of a great decision is too many choices. And so if you're doing all that work for somebody, because, honestly, like as a chef, right, I'll go to the grocery store and I'll have fun dreaming on each aisle. But when I have the privilege of like having the time to do so, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Typically, it's like a 60, 70 hour work week. And I don't have like an hour and a half to walk up and down each aisle, go to multiple stores and look and play around and dream. And usually I've got a pickup order waiting for me, and it's just essentials. And no creativity happens there, and you don't have the chance to dream because you're, maybe like myself, if there's too many choices, I'll get like a little decision paralysis.
Yes.
So I have to streamline the process for me, but it sounds like, you're kind of bundling all the dreams, ideas, creativity, and all the options together for somebody, right? And kind of just making it easier.
Yes, that's the goal. And also an additional layer of it is we know that people want to eat locally. We know that they want to eat meat that's ethically raised. We know that people care about the environment. They care about workers' rights and all these different things that are wrapped up in the story of local food. But to your point, who has the time to research all the farms, to make sure that they're doing it right, to make sure that they're raising their animals ethically, to make sure that they're treating their employees correctly? You want to do those things, but you don't have the time to do all that research and vetting yourself. And so when you work with small local companies, such as ourselves and many others around the state and the country that are doing this type of work, we're doing that vetting for you. So you can trust that the quality's there, but also there's the currency of trust of understanding that we're only working with folks that are doing it right. So you can feel confident that you're getting the best food that's raised in the right way.
Right. I mean, that's just such an incredible opportunity for a consumer, because I can't even imagine I can imagine what life was like before the internet. So I was in 85 and, it's AOL discs, dial up. I've been through those stages, right? But before that, as interconnected as we are now by technology, we're still extremely isolated from one another in the way that like communities used to be able to vouch for each other. If you wanted apples, you knew that you went 3 houses down from the red barn that was on the end of the street, right? And everybody knew where the best milk came from and everything else. But we don't have those relationships with our neighbors anymore. And so you're doing this on a huge like macro level, right? But it's still extremely local, and it's all that legwork. All that legwork is done. And I think that's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that so much. And so how long has Family Dinner been around?
We started 6 years ago, very much in a beta phase. Just this idea of like, any startup, like you have an idea. And the biggest question is, when do you go? When do you say yes and just jump off the cliff and give it a shot? And we decided that we would ask like 10 of our friends, tell them about the business and be like, hey, can we bring you your groceries every week? And our like lovely, patient, kind friends were like, sure.
Aww.
Sure. You two people are nuts, but sure. And so my husband and I ran it out of our apartment in Somerville.
Oh, wow.
It was it's not street legal. Like it was not the best because there's like kale all over your house on a Sunday, like a Saturday. It's so messy, but it allowed us to like incubate and make mistakes and iterate and try again, make more mistakes. Like every possible error and bad decision that could have been made, we made it 100%.
Yeah.
We started in the slowest, least efficient way imaginable.
Right.
But then by the time we started to grow a little bit more, we were able to move into a shared kitchen facility and have that sort of financial security around like, we're not taking too much of a risk here, but it's street legal. And now it's no longer in our apartment driving us insane. Now we can really move and we can scale.
I can't even imagine. So you probably look like a farmer's market stall in there.
Oh, totally. Totally. And, you think about the relationship with the farmer when you first start and you're like, I'd like 5 pounds of chicken, please. People are like, yeah, cute. You're just noise in my ear. But as you grow and you don't want 5 pounds of chicken, you want 50 and then 100 and then 1,000. Now we're talking about more direct relationships. And now people will answer the phone. Because they understand that you're giving them a much bigger market share than they could get on their own by doing one drop off, right? Instead of them having to forge a relationship and make a connection to 600 customers, they sell to us and we get those customers. We get that relationship and deal with all of the customer service, last mile logistics, quality concerns, et cetera. And they just get to grow incredible food.
Yeah.
Right. Not just because it's hard work, but that's
what an amazing, like, you're changing those people's lives.
And we couldn't do it without them, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that work. I mean, these people are working incredibly hard and all we get to do is just open the door a little bit wider because of the systems that we've set up. And I think it's a nice proposition to be able to say, have the relationship with them that we can come and say, what do you have this week? And they'll say, it's mustard greens, it's asparagus, it's blueberries. And we say, yes, this number of that, this number of this. And they can also come to us and say, I really need to move carrots. We have thousands of pounds of carrots. And then we make a plan, 600 pounds this week, 600 pounds 3 weeks from now, whatever it is.
So is it like a subscription based or how many deliveries or how does that work?
Sure. It is a subscription service. So it is run entirely on e-commerce off Shopify. We modified the Shopify experience to make it a little bit more suited to our needs and to filter into the back end to our ordering system.
Sure.
So we did some custom coding there. But everything's off Shopify. If you are a customer, you are signed up for a weekly subscription. So you will get one every week unless you skip a week. And you can skip 1 week, you can skip 30 weeks. You can go on indefinite pause. We want it to be incredibly flexible for our customers.
Right. Really approachable. It sounds like very user-friendly.
We're trying, yeah. And so it processes every week. And on Monday mornings, I get the orders come in. We get to see how many folks are in that week, how much we need to source for proteins, fish, cheese, eggs, produce, everything. And then we spend all week trying to fulfill it. And then we deliver on the weekend.
Oh man, I love it.
Yeah,
I love that so much. And what's your service area?
So we deliver anywhere in the 495 belt of Massachusetts, which is basically most of Eastern Massachusetts, coastal and it's about 120 towns total. Do about 600 deliveries a week. And we got excited about thinking about the structure of family dinner and the processes that we had created and wondering if these systems were transferable to a different geography.
Right.
So the biggest question is, could I take family dinner and move it to Dallas and set up a family dinner in Dallas? We didn't start, our first experiment wasn't that far. We went to Portland, Maine, but we started a new outpost of family dinner in Portland, Maine to service Maine and Seacoast, New Hampshire.
Wow.
So all of the systems and all of the technology and all the software and all the processes that we created and honed over years, we picked up and plunked into Maine. But it can't just be cookie cutter. I can't take my farmers from Massachusetts and service Maine. We have to work with Maine farmers. So now you're starting from the beginning. I'm Erin Baumgartner. This is this company. We would love to work with you. Right. And so now you're not back in your apartment in Somerville, but you're back having a startup within a startup.
I mean, I think it's really important, right? Because you can't stress that one supply chain. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it wouldn't make sense because all of the items wouldn't be truly local anyway.
Correct.
At that rate, right? Like I could just be like, well, I want blueberries from Maine. I'll order them from Amazon. It doesn't really make sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So how many people does it take to run an operation like this?
We have 3 full-time employees and probably 35 part-time folks.
That's amazing.
And one of the things that I'm proudest of is that so many members of our team have been with us kind of from the beginning. Like these are folks that I've known for 5 years. And this isn't, the most glamorous job, but we try to treat people well, try to treat them with respect. The food, there's always snacks. The food is good. The jokes are bad. The music is terrible. But we want it to be a place of a respectful place to work. And we're very grateful that we've had a lot of people who have been there for a long time.
Well, first of all, glamour is overrated.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it says a lot when you're all, getting behind one vision and you're serving people. And so I always feel like the people who are serving people always end up serving each other in one way or the other. And it takes a motley crew to do that, right? Like it takes a very specific breed of person to work in our industry. And when I say our industry, at co-ops, grocery delivery, things like family dinner, restaurants, it's all the same. Yeah, it's all the same business, right? Anything that touches food, I feel. And so, it takes a very specific breed. And you're right. There's some bad jokes. There's some
the music is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? But you're picking who you want to spend your time with, and you're helping people. Right. And it goes way further than feeding people, I think. Yeah. And I think that's so lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that there's something really nice about, and it's a real privilege to get to like your work, right? That's not something that everybody gets to say, that you believe.
What a novel concept, right?
Yeah, that you like your work, that you believe in your work, that you think it's additive. Like it sounds, I don't know, like putting on airs or something, but I feel like it's a real privilege to like the thing that you do and to like the people you work with.
Yeah. It shouldn't be as mind-blowing as it is, right?
Yeah. Like this shouldn't be super novel.
Tired tropes of like hating your job and running the rat race and everything else. But
yeah, I don't want to do that.
There's something about food that has this ability to unite people because it's just a common ground. We all like different kind of food. We like it from different places. Maybe I prepare something different than you do. Like I do want to talk about pizza because I know you had this thing about pizza. So, but at the end of the day, we can still unite over the fact that pizza is delicious.
Oh, totally.
And
yeah, absolutely.
And every piece of this business, I feel like has its role, a niche role, right? Like you talked about working in Applebee's. Like Applebee's has its place. It might be like here and not like there. I'm doing this like the listeners can see me, but I was holding my hands high and low, guys. But yeah, it still has an important place. And it probably means different to somebody, than somebody else. Right.
And I don't have anything, my opinions on Applebee's and places like it are not that people like it. Food's tasty. Fried food is real good. Like I'm not trying to, that's not where I'm trying to.
Oh, of course.
Hang up with folks with places like Applebee's. It's not that people like it. It's not that people are comforted and like to go there. That's great. People need, service exists at all types of different levels. My only thing with large companies is I think they have a huge opportunity to do better, right? To buy food that is better sourced, to buy food where the animals are being treated better. And they have a way bigger seat at the table and a way bigger microphone and megaphone than folks like you and I do. Yeah, they have a huge opportunity, and I just wish that they would take it a little bit more.
It's like using your power for good instead of evil.
Yeah, and using your enormous amount of power.
Right.
It's huge.
Whatever your platform is, like just furthering that good. And that's what this is all about, right? Is thoughtfully engaging with your local food supply. And I think it's more important now than ever.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about, this term supply chain. I feel like it really entered our cultural consciousness, of course, like during the beginning of the pandemic. And because it was now something that we could put words to that was actually affecting us in ways that I felt like we couldn't see before. It was probably like news cycle related, right? Like it's always affected every consumer, but I feel like it was just in our face. And so do you think, how do you think that affected, something like family dinner? Did you guys see increased? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is like in the rise of all the grocery delivery that we didn't have pre-COVID, right? Like, was that a boon to your business, or how was it navigating that? Or like, what did that look like?
Sure. The pandemic was a huge boon to our business. So pre-pandemic, we were, X number of years ago doing about 330 deliveries a week, let's say. And then the pandemic really hit its peak, and we went to doing 700 deliveries a week. But in a period of like 10 days, that increase was extraordinary.
Wow.
And we then had 900 people on a wait list. So as a business owner, thinking about 900 potential repeat subscription customers that you have to say no to because you just I couldn't control the quality. I couldn't keep up with the work. Like it was really hard.
Yeah.
But talk about a position of privilege. Like it was hard, meaning we worked a lot. We had a lot to do, but it wasn't as if we were a restaurant that had to close or a bar that had to close or somebody who lost all their wholesale accounts. So like nobody wants to hear you whine about this, Erin. It was hard, but we were doing very well. I think that what the point that you're making is really interesting is that the pandemic brought the term supply chain, I think, into a lot of people's minds and really reinforced some of the things that a lot of us in food had been thinking all along. Knowing where your food comes from matters.
Yeah.
And, blow the supply chain up a little bit farther, go a little bit farther out. Knowing where the things that you buy come from matters.
Right.
Right. Who made them? Under what conditions? What did it cost to make this thing? What did it cost the environment to ship it to you? These are questions that you could ask yourself until you're blue in the face. But I think that the pandemic, food-wise, really showed people that having, in pandemic terms, as few hands touch your food as possible is really nice. And so starting to think about, if I can get my chicken from the farmer down the street and she'll sell it to me directly. That feels better than getting chicken shipped from China, Peru, Mexico, wherever.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it wasn't a problem until it became a problem, right?
Sure.
We've always been you can just go to the store and get whatever you need until all of a sudden you can't. And then you're forced to reconcile this thought of like, oh, wow, I didn't know that there was any difficulty in getting these items. Wow, I didn't know that we were going to be short on all of a sudden. It's not all of a sudden, right? It's suppliers have been dealing with this for a long time, right? Like the weather affects the grain, which affects the cows, which affects A, B, and C. But it was so prevalent in the news cycle that it was like, and it forced the common consumer or like home cooks, homemakers, and just regular Joes, right? Like it kind of forced them to go, oh, like there's a whole lot that goes into this.
Yeah. Well, and the next step of what you're saying, I think, is there's a whole lot that goes into this. So I need to value it a little bit more. So like, okay, maybe I didn't finish this chicken breast. I'm not going to throw it away. This chicken breast now becomes tomorrow's sandwich or whatever. Just because that banana or that avocado or whatever that's sitting on your counter doesn't look so great, I'm still going to find a use for it because maybe it's a little rarer or harder to get my mitts on.
Yeah, well, 100%. And I think also it's a forced reevaluation of your relationship to leftovers.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like if they were vilified while you were growing up, maybe the supply chain issues, or maybe the awareness that was built around that, right, affected somebody's, maybe their mindset changed, and they went, "Oh,
I would love that." We've been, my husband's been threatening to write a cookbook for years called "Don't Throw That Away, I'll Eat It."
Oh my gosh,
because we will things can be old in our house, and we will turn them into something else, find a way to eat it. It might not be great. It'll have to be to a point that I'll say something like, Tim, I have absolutely no recollection of cooking that. Not this last week, not the week before. I have no recollection of having prepared that meal. You can't eat it.
So are you like a cut the mold off the cheese person? Yeah.
Totally. Expiration dates are total BS. And I know many people grew up with it expired, you can no longer eat it, but you have to trust your senses.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. So from one of those big box membership stores, I bought tons of yogurt, maybe 2 weeks ago. I got a really good deal. It was 15 little yogurt cups for $12.
Wow.
I'm a single gal. I can't eat that much yogurt. And I ate it every day in a row and eventually got tired. I get a little burned. I got to have variety, right? It's the spice of life. And so I ended up freezing them and using them as smoothie pucks.
Cool.
So you pop one out it's your own little ice cube. And I put it with spinach and berries or whatever. But the reality is so for me as a single gal, right? I was looking through condiments this morning. I went to a local bakery this morning. I went out for a coffee run. And there's a little local spot that makes an egg, bacon, and cheese tart. It's in a croissant base, and they're doing them by hand. It's incredible. Shout out to Lubella's Patisserie here in Dallas. She's doing incredible things. But when I got home, I wanted something to go on it. So I start browsing. You said you have a shelf for mustard. Well, the door shelves of my fridge it's all condiments.
Yeah.
And so I started browsing. I was I don't want sriracha.
Yeah.
And this isn't quite right for hoisin. I was I think I have green salsa in here. I was maybe not. And so I reached way back and found this jar of cranberry pepper jam. It was
cool.
Jalapeno cranberry pepper jam.
Yep.
Girl, I think when I opened the jar, it said hi. I don't know how. I think it was sentient. I don't know how long it had been in there, and I had never been more disappointed because the entire thing was molded over, and I was oh my gosh, I got to remember to wash these jars out.
Yeah, that's a little too far. But the "Don't Throw That Away, I'll Eat It" cookbook, I think. I mean, everything on our house when it's old, you've got some chicken, you've got some everything becomes fried rice.
Oh, 100%.
Everything goes into fried rice. Everything goes into quesadillas. Anything can be a pizza. We will make these things out of anything. I
have very few rules when it comes to what goes on pizza because I feel in America, pizza is so far from what the Italians intended that nothing is sacrilege anymore. And I'm like a huge pineapple on pizza fan. I don't care what anybody thinks about
I don't care either. I mean, and also like, widen the lens on that. I don't care what anybody thinks, period. And so I definitely don't care what they think.
So you're like, the food is the least of my worries.
Yeah, like I'm not going to start caring when it comes to pineapple on pizza, because that is absolutely delicious.
Well, I got off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I wanted to ask you about how technology is building like a more resilient supply chain. Like what does that look like, the nuts and bolts of it?
I think that one of the amazing things about technology and the prevalence of data is that all of this data that's being generated, and this is sort of a broad answer, is really becoming a storyteller and showing us things that we didn't really have insights on before. Mm-hmm. So like this data is giving us kind of a new type of journalism about the everyday things in our lives. Everything from like the flow of trash to waste to traffic, all of these things are better understood through data, and more specifically, the ways that we talk about and show data. It's not just enough that it sits in like the rarefied, nerdy halls of like MIT and Harvard and whatever. How do we get this stuff out into the world, and how do you tell stories? And when you dial it down or dial it in and think about the data around food, we can now understand the origin story of any single piece of produce, where it came from, what went into it, the chemicals that went into it, the earth, the soil it sat in, how rich or unrich that soil is, and how far it travels to get to your plate. You can understand food miles, CO2 emissions, depending on the type of transportation that this tomato took. All the stuff that we never saw before, because we didn't live in a global food landscape. You grew your stuff, or it came from down the street or whatever. So that data, I think, is incredibly rich and also allows us to understand where the system is weak and how we can make it better.
Wow.
And so I think that the data side of it is incredibly powerful. The software technology side of it, none of what we do with this company would be possible without software. None of it would be possible without the technology that we've either taken off the shelf or custom made. And so it entirely relies on that. But I think it's transformative in a way I'm hoping that is good. Right? Technology has done some terrible things for farming, as far as the introduction of more pesticides, more chemicals and things of that nature, making farms look like factories. But I think that you can take those same technologies and do better with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can definitely automate something to where it loses all of its charm and functionality. Mm-hmm. You can go way too far with that, but I love thinking about telling a story. Yeah, because when we buy food at the grocery store, like you can get Tyson chicken, and it might have started with a story in a really small operation, but it's really lost, all of its charm and all of its original, whatever it had to sell us. It's just a big production now.
Sure.
Right?
But it's hiding that very, very well. I mean, one of the interesting things as you walk through the grocery store is that everything has the word farm on it.
Oh yeah.
Farm or natural or homemade or whatever. And it's like in many ways, those things are they're just words. They have no metrics. Like, what does natural mean?
Oh yeah.
How do you measure natural?
And there's nobody is policing those words.
No, of course not. It's like, I always joke that it's like saying something's awesome. Right? It has no metrics. It has no definition. Right. You can't measure it. We're so disconnected from the story of the food, and that's intentional from large food companies. They don't want anybody peeking behind the curtain, because what you'd see isn't great. So what you'd rather do is make the surface shiny and the packaging pretty, and use words like natural, homemade, farm, etc., and make people feel good so that they don't peek behind the curtain.
Right. So I've had a couple of episodes recently. I dove into why hot dogs are considered patriotic. It's all marketing, right? Like I had a 4th of July episode, and recently talked about why breakfast is considered the most important meal of the day, which was also marketing ploy. Yeah. And it's not to vilify anybody, right? Like if you feel like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, go for it. If you feel like hot dogs make you feel more American, okay, that's fine.
And they're delicious.
You're right, and they're delicious. And this is also not to make anybody feel bad. Like if your closest grocery store is Walmart, and that's where you have to shop because it's right for you and your family, then
Great.
I'm certainly not here to make you feel bad about that either. But I do want you to know that you're being told a very specific story about what you buy,
Right.
So,
right.
And I just want to encourage people to tell their own food stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that local food has done poorly is that thing of vilifying people for buying nationally produced items. And it's like, hey man, like local food is really expensive. Right. And so there's no sense in shaming people around the food that they eat. I think that there is a hope to get people to start making a little bit more noise so that once again, these large companies themselves can do a little bit better. They can do better. They choose not to for financial reasons, but I'm not about to make anybody feel bad for buying Tyson chicken. That's
100%.
That's not our role here.
And so I think that's the really great thing about what you do, right? Is that you're allowing people to get into this at different stages and whatever works for them. And you have like subscriptions, right? But you're not holding anybody between a rock and a hard place. You're not saying like, you've got to get 6 deliveries or we're going to freeze your account or anything like that. And so it's just so important because you're rewriting that narrative.
Trying to, along with so many people who are doing just real. The cool thing, as you know, is when you start to work in food and you peel back the lid a little bit, you meet this person who knows this person who knows this person. This person's doing something really cool. Like and it turns out that the island of misfit toys is really expansive. And it's got a lot of cool people on it.
It is. It's like a network.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. It's a bunch of little islands all connected.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, man, it sounds so cool. It's really making me wish I could live up there.
Well, as we mentioned, the winters will not make you. That.
So Erin and I were talking just before I started recording, and I was telling her that I was jealous of Texas has 2 seasons, hot and not. So I was telling her that I was jealous of the weather in the New England area, but yeah, I also think if I probably 3 years into it of maybe having to shovel snow might make me change my mind, but I'm not sure because I don't know if it's like better or worse than 108 degrees. So
I don't know. I think everyone's got their thing, but summer in New England is kind of lovely.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to pick your poison, right?
Yeah.
So it started in Somerville and it was based out of your apartment, and you were going to local farms, or you just started, did you already know who was producing locally? Were you already eating that way and you decided you wanted to share it with everybody?
Yeah. So we knew some farms, we knew some people, and just as we were, and it's the story that we were just explaining, you meet one person who's like, you have to talk to this person. Once you break down that barrier and you can show one person that you're trying to do something good, that you're a reliable person to work with, or that you're an honest person to work with, they'll make another connection, and then another and another. But we spent, years wandering around local farmers markets, wandering around local farms. And anytime we see a product that we'd never seen before, taking a picture, getting in touch, trying everything. That was kind of some of the most fun, is trying all the different products, because we want to make sure that before we put it out to our customers, that we've had it, right? We have to be able to say it's good.
Yeah. I mean, how rewarding is it, A, to just get to experience that and try all the new things, and then B, to be able to speak honestly and know exactly what everybody's getting. Yeah.
But it's funny. Your own personality gets in the way sometimes. Like, I will eat almost anything, but I will not eat goat's cheese. I think it's gross.
No. Well, and everybody loves it. It's been really nice having you on the podcast.
Yeah. Everybody says that. It's like, if you meet someone who doesn't like chocolate, you're like, what? But so like, I don't like goat's cheese. I just never have. And so it never made its way into our customer shares for years. I just never had it because I thought it was vile. And finally, like, one of our employees was like, why don't we ever have chèvre? And I was like, because it's disgusting. And they were like, no, people love it. So I started putting it in the shares, and then yes, indeed, people love it, but it just never made it in because I happen to think it's gross.
Okay. So is it the tartness? Is it the texture? Like, is it all the things?
I think it's all the things. And like, I lived in France for a bit, and it's just like, it's on everything, and I couldn't avoid it. And I really just, on pizza and stuff, nightmare.
I will say though, if you were in France, you were surrounded by much better cheeses, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had other options. But it was, and it's funny how you get when you run the business, you get these blinders on of like, I think this way, so everyone else must think this is a horrifying cheese option, but that's clearly not true.
I get it. I had a long-lived like love-hate relationship with fennel and all things anise and licorice related.
Yeah.
I think it got better in my early 20s when I discovered Jägermeister. And then I started...
Better and worse. You mean
better and worse. And then I started making room for varying degrees of anisettes in my life. But it's still, if there's like raw fennel in the salad, I still can't do it. It's got to be like candied or caramelized or maybe fennel seed, like an Italian sausage. Like I'm getting there, but it was much the same. I wouldn't use it in any dishes because I was like, well, I don't like it, so nobody else gets to have it.
How could anybody else like it? It's just, and it's like you have this emphatic opinion, like it's disgusting.
Right? So I have to know, living in France, was that part of like maybe your food awakening, or did that affect?
I think so, because man, I was kind of picky when I was a little bit younger. Like I wouldn't eat fish. I didn't really like cheese. I was a vegetarian for a while, which was sad.
I was a vegetarian for 3.5 years.
Yeah, and it's like, but I get eating less meat. I totally get that.
I ate a lot of French fries. Like I didn't have the skills that I had later in life. I just didn't understand like how to do it smart.
Yeah, and so you're eating horrific food anyway. So, I think the thing that was lovely about living in France is just the focus on food and the focus on quality. And the focus on like that meals are actually very small, right? It's a different sort of portion understanding, but understanding that an ingredient can be incredibly simple and perfect. Like things don't have to be overly complicated. That was something nice to learn.
Yeah, it's completely different. The European relationship to food is completely different than here in America, and it's definitely a quantity versus quality thing. And a lot of that's due to marketing as well.
Totally.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. I love that though. I love that slow food movement and just telling people that, hey, this doesn't have to be complicated to be really delicious.
Right. And like, there's something true to be said. And I do a terrible job at this because like in a normal work week, like I'm probably eating meals like in my truck, like 75% of the time. Right. Like I had to finally stop eating soup while driving because it's a mess. But like the very terrible, the very European idea is like, just do the one thing, sit and enjoy your meal. Don't be on your phone, sit and have coffee, have a beer with a friend and just be doing that thing. You don't also have to be working or reading or texting or on Instagram. Just have your meal. Love your meal.
I think there's been a real return to mindfulness, both as a concept, but like also in where food is concerned, because we're on screens so much. Funny enough, I record this podcast at my dining room table. I don't eat many meals here. It's usually one end of the couch trying to fend off a couple dogs, or I also eat off a paper plate from my passenger seat. So, or because I'm accustomed to eating standing up as a chef, I will eat at my kitchen counter, and I often will stop mid meal and go like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, Are you just consuming calories here, or is there any enjoyment? My friends who own a bakery say that they eat most of their food standing over a trash can.
Yes,
and it's like these people are artisan bakers.
You have to assume the stance.
Yeah, totally.
Elbows up.
Yep. If you've worked in service, you know the stance.
Yeah. 100%. So I have to ask you, I took 4 years of French in high school thinking that I would need it to work in a kitchen. I couldn't have been more wrong. Maybe in a brigade style kitchen, I would have needed it, but that was not the direction that my career took. And in middle school, I took 3 years of Spanish, not knowing how much I would need it to work in a kitchen. And do you ever just mix them up? Do you just mix them together in your brain?
My French is my Spanish at this point sounds like sort of like a drunk child talking. Like I can get my thoughts across, I can say a few things, but I'm not going to sound smart or funny or interesting. And I'll probably use the wrong word at some point or another. I'm a little better. I'm better in French than Spanish, but you know, I do. I don't think I'm. Yeah, small words I might mix up, but none of it's very beautiful sounding in Spanish. Like it's like speaking for calories, right? Like you're not for the art of the thing.
They say that Portuguese is actually Spanish after 6 beers. And so in a little bit of traveling, I've had the chance to use a little Portuguese,
cool, and
some Spanish, but I'll use Spanish day to day in the kitchen. But Texas Spanish is nothing like Castilian. It's extremely different. It's very slang, and very, very different. But I do find myself every once in a while with like numbers or verb tenses just going back and forth and going like, what are you trying to say now?
Yeah.
Like,
and everyone's being lovely and patient, but what's the point here?
Yeah. And especially with food terms.
Oh, sure.
I just find myself thinking, like, I was talking about, I have a prep cook who speaks French, is his first language. And I was talking with him about omelets the other day, and I was asking him questions about how to say things. But my natural inclination in a kitchen is always to consider what the Spanish is. And so I was all over the place. And he was like, "Chef, I don't know what you're trying to say." And I was like, I don't either. I was getting like, I was fromage and queso and all this. I was just like, oh gosh, it's just mangled in there.
Everything's a mess.
Everything's a mess.
Man.
Yeah. And I just tell people I'm dumb enough in English. So I just, it's the funny thing about Spanish is that I can tell you all about what's going on today, but if you want to hear about yesterday or tomorrow, I can't do it. The tenses are hard.
that's totally fair.
But my staff is super gracious. They'll let me ramble on and they'll go, "Did you mean this?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh."
Yes, I did. Thank you.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Tell me about how we can support family dinner from afar.
Sure. We would love anybody to like follow our story on Instagram. We're at Share Family Dinner. And same on Facebook is Share Family Dinner. We love talking to folks. We love any opportunity to connect with people who are interested in food. Our website is familydinner.com, and on it is a link to contact us. And so all those emails go to me. I read them all. I write to folks. That's where people write in to ask questions or complain more about.
Oh, they never complain.
No. No. And so, yeah, we love to hear from folks, and we love connecting with people and learning about the things that people are doing in local food. So we'd love to hear from folks.
Wow, absolutely. You will get no shortage of promotions from the Food Thoughtcast. So Thoughtcast fam, I will put the guest page up for Erin at the foodforthoughtcast.com, and you'll see links to her and her endeavor at our Instagram and Facebook page. And then I want to talk about how anything can be a pizza.
I mean, I think this is really important to consider on all levels. So anything can be a pizza is really going to horrify some people. And I understand that like there's tried and true Neapolitan pizza, like people have opinions, but when it's time to empty your refrigerator, any substrate, so any bread, any quesadilla, any bread, any tortilla, any dough that you have can be covered in any kind of sauce and any kind of melted cheese. And I think that's a worthwhile endeavor. I like to get creative with it, and I like to act out of desperation sometimes. But anything is made better with melted cheese. Whether or not it's technically a pizza according to the culinary standards of the world, I don't particularly care. But yeah, lots of things get turned into air quotes pizza in my house.
So I have to ask you the $1 million question then.
Oh, yeah.
Is a flatbread a pizza?
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like, is a hot dog a sandwich? And I feel like
I know.
I feel like we could spend a lot of time here and my mind might melt. I think a flatbread is a pizza. I will say
okay.
it. I think a flatbread.
I think so too. And flatbread's really close to the origin of modern day pizza. So
yeah, I'm into it. I'll say yes on that one.
I really like that. My only frustration with desperation meals is that you can create something amazing, and then if you never have those circumstances or ingredients again, you can't repeat it.
No, it's like winking at a stranger.
Yeah, it's here and gone.
Yeah, totally, and that's okay. That's okay.
I've had the best time talking
Melissa,
to you
this
today,
has been so
Erin.
wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Have a wonderful day.
And try to stay cool, you poor thing.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's a wrap for today. Until the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast, make good food, eat good food, share it, and be kind to one another.
Thanks so much for listening today. You are part of what makes us special, and we are so glad you joined us. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. Just like food, delicious podcasts are better when you share them with others. Come back for seconds wherever podcasts are served, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Food for Thoughtcast or at www.foodforthoughtcast.com, where you can link to all podcast players, or you can send us an email at foodforthoughtcmc@gmail.com.